The air conditioning unit has been running since 8 this morning. It never stops. You can hear it from the kitchen. It is loud. You can hear it from the bedroom, even through the walls. You walk past the thermostat at 2 in the afternoon and it still reads 81 degrees and you think, why is it not working? You turned it down to 70. You have had it serviced. You replaced the filter in April and the machine just keeps running, pulling electricity, costing money, and your house is still hot. Now look at your last 3 summer electricity bills. Now add them up. For most American homes, central air conditioning costs somewhere between $300 and $600 every single summer month. It is very expensive. That is not a one-time purchase. That is a subscription you never agreed to sign. You pay it in June. You pay it in July. You pay it in August. And when the unit finally breaks, and it will break because they are built with that expectation, you pay $4,000 to $8,000 to replace it. That cycle repeats every 10 to 15 years. I want to tell you about a different way. It costs under $300 to set up. It is a simple one-time payment that pays for itself quickly. Not $300 a month. $300 once. That is all it takes to get started. Just $300 once. And when it is working correctly, it holds the core of your home at or near 55 degrees Fahrenheit through the hottest weeks of the year, without running a compressor, without a monthly bill attached to it, and without any moving parts that can break down and leave you sweating in July, waiting for a repair technician who cannot come until Thursday. Now, here is the part that should make you a little uneasy. This is not a new invention. It is not a patent-pending device from a startup company. It is a very old principle, adapted from the way mountain homes in Japan were built and managed for hundreds of years before electricity arrived. It was natural. The materials used for this are cheap. The method for doing this is extremely simple. And if you look at the history of how mainstream home cooling advice developed in this country over the last 60 years, you will notice that the simple, cheap, passive methods were not exactly promoted by the people selling compressors and refrigerant contracts. I will come back to that. Stay with me. I want to show you exactly how this works. My name is Hiroshi Tanaka. I grew up in a small mountain village in Japan, in the kind of place people now call Satoyama, which means, roughly, the land between the mountain forest and the farmable valley below. It is beautiful. Satoyama is not just a geography. It is a way of managing the land, the water, the trees, and the home together, so that each one supports the others through every season. I mention this because it matters for what I am about to teach you. It is fundamental. I grew up in a wooden home with no air conditioning. The summers in that region are not mild. 35 degrees Celsius, that is 95 degrees Fahrenheit, with humidity that makes the air feel like warm, wet cloth. My father kept that house cool. His father kept it cool before him. The method they used was not complicated. It was elegant in its simplicity. But it required understanding one thing that most modern cooling systems completely ignore. I will explain that thing in a moment, because if you do not understand it, the rest of what I say will not make sense. Before I do, I want to ask you a very important question. Look at me. If you find what I share here useful, the old methods, the cheap fixes, the things that were done before the expensive products arrived, then stay close. There is more coming, and it is all the same kind of thinking. Tradition and science together. Press the subscribe button wherever it sits on your screen right now, so you do not miss the next one. And while you are thinking about that, tell me something. Where are you watching from today? Are you in a dry heat climate or a humid one? Are you in a dry heat climate or a humid one? Each environment has its own unique challenges. Are you in an old house or a newer build? It makes a big difference. Drop it in the comments. I read them all, and I look forward to hearing from you today. I read them, and it helps me understand which problems to address next. I appreciate your feedback. Now let us get back to it. Back to the thing my father understood, that the air conditioning industry has spent 60 years quietly not talking about. The problem is not the air in your home. Cooling the air is what your air conditioner does, and it is not entirely wrong, but it is fighting the wrong battle. The real heat in your home on a hot summer day is not floating in the air. It is stored in the mass of your home. You can literally feel the heat radiating from the walls, inside the walls of your house, in the floors. Every square inch of your home is part of it. It is even in the ceiling materials of your house, in every solid object that has been absorbing sunlight and outdoor heat since sunrise. Everything counts. That mass holds onto heat the way a cast iron pan holds onto heat after you take it off the burner. You can blow cold air over a cast iron pan all afternoon, and it will still burn your hand. It holds the heat. The pan does not care about the air temperature. It has its own heat. It has its own temperature, and it gives that heat back slowly, over hours, right into the room where you are sitting and wondering why it is still so warm. This is the principle my grandfather understood without needing a word for it. He lived by it. He called it simply keeping the house heavy and cool. The science calls it thermal mass, but you do not need the term. What you need to understand is this: if the mass of your home is cool, your home stays cool. If the mass of your home is warm, no amount of cold air blowing through it will make you comfortable for very long. It radiates. Your air conditioner is not failing because it is broken. It is a design issue. It is failing because it was never designed to solve the actual problem. It was designed to cool air, and cooled air in a home full of warm mass is gone within minutes, absorbed, neutralized, disappeared, while the compressor runs and runs and your electricity meter spins. That is the problem nobody names on the service call. That is the problem the salesman does not mention when he quotes you a new unit. And that is exactly the problem the system I am going to walk you through was built to solve from the ground up, with materials that cost almost nothing, using logic that has been sitting quietly in old mountain villages for longer than air conditioning has existed. Here is what happens in the average home on a hot summer morning. The day begins. The sun comes up in the morning. It hits the roof, the south-facing wall, the concrete of the driveway. Hard and direct. Those surfaces begin absorbing heat immediately. Inside the walls, inside the floor slab, inside the ceiling drywall, that heat moves slowly inward, not fast, but steadily, the way water soaks through cloth. It spreads. By 10 in the morning, the air inside your home may still feel acceptable. The air conditioner has not worked very hard yet today, but just wait. But the walls are already warming. The mass is absorbing heat. The floor is warming. You can feel the energy rising from below. The mass of the home is charging up like a battery, except instead of storing electricity, it is storing heat. And it will release that stored heat slowly into your living space for the next 12 to 16 hours. A slow burn. This is why your home feels hottest, not at noon, when the sun is strongest outside, but at 4 or 5 in the afternoon, and sometimes still at 10 at night. The cycle continues. The sun has already set, the day is ending, the outdoor air has already cooled. But your walls are still giving back everything they absorbed since sunrise. You can feel the heat. Your air conditioner is running against that stored heat. It is running against the mass of your home, the solid weight of the building, and it cannot win that fight, not efficiently, not even close. Not efficiently, it is wasting energy and your money. Not cheaply, it costs more than you think, much more. Now here is what my grandfather's home did differently. Observe the structure. The walls of the old homes in our Satoyama village were thick, incredibly thick. Not thick with insulation foam, but thick with dense, heavy, traditional materials, packed earth mixed with straw. Heavy materials, cedar timber framing, the weight of tradition, materials with significant thermal mass, the core of the cooling system. And those materials, because they are heavy and dense, do not warm up quickly. They hold the cool. Heat moves through them slowly, like a slow-moving river. That is the key. This is the key, the secret to keeping it all cool. A wall with high thermal mass takes many hours to absorb enough heat to become warm on its interior face. Many, many hours. If you manage that wall correctly, If you keep the outdoor face shaded during the day, it stays cool. Not air conditioner cold, but perfectly acceptable. But cool, naturally cool, always cool. Naturally, steadily, without a compressor. That is how it works. Without a bill, $0, forever. The target that made life comfortable in those high mountain homes was not 70 degrees as most people might expect. It was certainly not 68 degrees either, which is still quite far from the target temperature of these traditional homes. The old homes in cold mountain regions sat naturally at around 55 degrees Fahrenheit in their core spaces through the summer. 55 degrees in the storage room, the doma entry, the thick-walled kura storehouse where food and tools were kept. And even the living spaces, managed correctly with bamboo sudare screens on the south windows, the Engawa veranda shading the wall below the roofline, and the deliberate opening and closing of shoji screens to control airflow. Those spaces held comfortably in the low 70s through weeks that would have been brutal without the system behind them. You do not live in a traditional Japanese farmhouse. I understand this perfectly, and I'm here to help you apply these principles to your own home. What I am going to show you is how to apply this same thermal mass principle to the home you have right now, using materials you can source at a hardware store or online for a total first-time cost of under $300. Not to rebuild your walls, not to replaster your ceilings, but to create zones of thermal mass inside your existing home that act as heat buffers, absorbing warmth before it reaches your living space, releasing it slowly at night when the outdoor temperature drops and you can afford to vent it out. The materials you will need are just these 4 simple things. The first material we will focus on is plain, everyday water. Plain water stored in sealed, dark-colored containers, the kind of heavy-duty 5-gallon food-grade buckets you can buy for roughly $2 each, with lids that seal tight. Water has one of the highest thermal mass values of any common material found in your home. It absorbs an enormous amount of heat before its temperature rises noticeably. 1 gallon of water absorbs about 8.3 British thermal units of heat for every 1 degree Fahrenheit its temperature rises. That is a useful number, but here is the plain version. A group of 5-gallon buckets filled with water placed correctly in your home will absorb heat that would otherwise be absorbed by the air you are breathing and the walls around you. They are pulling the heat out of the room and into themselves slowly all day, keeping your air temperature lower and more stable without any electricity at all. The second material is ceramic or dense clay tiles, the kind sold as floor tiles at any tile supply shop or large hardware store, typically between 40 and 80 cents per square foot in standard sizes. Dense ceramic has excellent thermal mass. It stays cool to the touch, even during the hottest hours of the day. It absorbs heat slowly, acting as a slow and steady buffer for your home. Laid or stacked in key locations, it acts the same way the packed earth walls of my grandfather's home acted, as a slow, steady buffer between the heat wanting to enter and the cool you are trying to preserve. The third material is binchotan charcoal. In Japan, we call it white charcoal. Binchotan has been used in mountain homes for centuries, not only for its thermal properties, but for its ability to regulate humidity. And humidity, as I will explain, is the hidden second half of the cooling problem. You can find binchotan sold online in bundles of roughly 2 pounds for a total cost of around $12 to $15. A home needs between 10 and 20 pounds total to make a meaningful difference, which puts this portion of the budget at $60 to $150, depending on where you source it. The fourth material is reflective foil insulation, the kind sold in rolls, sometimes called radiant barrier. Available at hardware stores for roughly $25 to $40 per 500 square foot roll. This is not a new product. It has been used in various forms for quite some time. It is simply a layer of reflective material installed inside your attic floor or along the underside of your roof decking to reflect radiant heat back outward before it enters the mass of your home. Without this layer, the sun heats your roof and that heat radiates downward directly into your ceiling and upper walls all day long. With it, you stop the heat at the very first surface it hits, preventing it from entering your home. This one material, properly installed, can reduce the radiant heat load entering your home through the ceiling by 40 to 60%. Those four essential materials together form the core of the system. Water containers, ceramic tile, binchotan charcoal, and radiant barrier foil. That is the simple but effective system. The total cost for a standard 3-bedroom home runs between $220 and $300 on the first setup. After that, the water and ceramic last indefinitely. The high-quality binchotan charcoal typically lasts between 2 and 3 years before it needs replacing. The radiant barrier, once installed, needs no maintenance for 10 years or more. My grandfather kept a row of large ceramic jars along the north interior wall of the doma, the earthen-floored entry room at the front of the house. Some of the large jars were used to store staples like rice. Some of the jars held traditional pickled vegetables for the family. Some of those ancient ceramic jars were kept full of cool mountain water. He was not thinking about the scientific laws of thermal mass in those specific terms. He simply knew that the room with the heavy jars was always the coolest room, and that a person who was overheated could stand in that room for a few minutes and feel the air change around them. He never explained why it worked. He just knew that it did, and that his father had done the same thing, and his father before him. The explanation I found later in the same physics every engineer learns, but the practice was already there, waiting in the village, in the jars, in the cool north room that always smelled of cedar and clay. That is the essential foundation for the entire cooling system. Now we build the system, room by room, and I will tell you exactly where to put each piece and why. Let me walk you through the home, the way I would walk through my own house. Not room by room in the way a real estate agent would, front door to backyard, ticking boxes, but in the order that the heat enters, because that is the only order that matters when you are building a system like this. You stop the heat at the first place it touches. Then we address the second entry point for the heat. Then we move to the third critical placement of materials. And by the time it reaches the space where you are living and sleeping, it has lost most of its force. The first step is to start on the roof of your home. This is where between 40 and 60% of your summer heat load begins. Before you buy a single bucket or a single tile, go into your attic. If you have an attic floor covered in loose insulation, but no reflective barrier on the underside of the roof decking above you, you are letting radiant heat pour straight down into the top of your home all day long. The radiant barrier foil I mentioned, be sure to buy 2 rolls for a standard home. Working from the center ridge outward, staple it to the underside of the roof rafters with the reflective face pointing downward toward the attic floor. Leave a 1-inch gap between the foil and the roof decking above it. That air gap is what allows the system to work. Without it, the foil conducts heat directly instead of reflecting it. This is a half-day job for one person. It requires a standard staple gun, a sharp utility knife, and significant patience while working in a hot attic. Be sure to do this in the early morning when the attic space is still relatively cool from the night. Be sure to wear long sleeves for protection while working in the attic. The total material cost for this step on a standard home is between $50 and $80. Once the roof is addressed, move to the south and west-facing windows. These are the 2 faces of your home that receive direct sun during the hottest hours of the day. South from late morning through early afternoon, west from early afternoon through sunset. The west-facing windows are often the worst offenders because they receive direct sun precisely when the outdoor temperature is at its peak, and your wall mass is already well charged with stored heat. For these windows, you need exterior shading, not interior. This is a point worth pausing on to fully understand the mechanics of solar shading. Interior blinds and curtains are not useless, but they stop the heat after it has already passed through the glass and entered the room. Exterior shading, bamboo roll-up screens, wooden shutters, or a simple temporary shade sail mounted on the outside of the frame stops the radiant heat before it crosses the glass. In Japan, the sudare, a bamboo roll-up blind hung on the exterior of the engawa, does exactly this. You can find exterior bamboo roll shades at most large home stores for between $15 and $30 per window. For a home with 4 to 6 west and south-facing windows, budget between $60 and $180 for this step. Hang them so they extend beyond the window frame on both sides by at least 3 inches to provide full coverage. The goal is to shade the glass itself, not just the interior of the room where the heat has already entered. Now move to the interior of your home. This is where the sealed water containers and the ceramic tile really go to work together. The principle here is placement. You want your thermal mass materials positioned between the main heat sources and the spaces where people spend their time. For the water containers, the most effective locations are along interior walls that back onto the south or west exterior, the wall that the afternoon sun heats from outside. 5-gallon buckets, filled completely, sealed, and painted or wrapped in a dark color to increase their heat absorption, placed in a row along the base of that wall. For a standard living room with one such wall, 4 to 6 buckets is a reasonable starting point. That is between 20 and 30 gallons of water working as a passive heat sink all day. They will absorb heat steadily from the warming wall behind them and from the air around them, keeping both cooler than they would otherwise be. At night, when outdoor temperatures drop, open your windows on the north and east sides of the home, the sides that see no direct sun, and allow the cool night air to draw that stored heat out of the water and out of the building. The water buckets reset completely overnight. They are ready again by morning. The ceramic tiles serve a similar purpose in different spaces. In a kitchen, where cooking adds heat on top of solar heat, stack dense tiles on the countertops and on the floor near the stove. In a bedroom, a few large tiles placed on the floor near the window do more cooling work per square foot than almost anything else you can buy for the price. They stay cool to the touch well into the afternoon. A person who sits or lies near them feels the difference immediately. For a bedroom, 2 to 4 large format tiles, the kind sold as 12 by 24-inch floor tiles, cost between $4 and $12 total and provide meaningful, measurable cooling mass in the space where you sleep. The Binchotan charcoal goes into the spaces where humidity builds. A bedroom, a bathroom, a kitchen, any room that traps moisture. Pack the charcoal loosely into a breathable cloth bag, a simple cotton bag, not plastic, and place it in the corner of the room, on a shelf, or hung near a window. Binchotan does 2 things simultaneously. It absorbs excess moisture from the air, which lowers the felt temperature of the room significantly. Humid air at 78 degrees feels hotter than dry air at 82 degrees because humidity slows the evaporation of sweat from your skin, and it slowly releases that absorbed moisture back when the air becomes too dry, acting as a natural humidity regulator in both directions. It does not cool the air mechanically. It makes the existing air temperature feel more bearable by keeping humidity in a comfortable range. For a standard bedroom, 1 bundle of roughly 2 pounds of Binchotan is enough. For a larger open-plan living space, use 3 to 4 bundles in corners spaced across the room. Now I will not skip what this system cannot do because honest is better than impressive. This system will not replace air conditioning in a home with poor construction, no shade trees, single-pane windows on every wall, and no ability to open windows at night. If you live in a climate where nighttime temperatures stay above 80 degrees Fahrenheit for weeks at a stretch, parts of Texas, Arizona, Florida in deep summer, the overnight reset that makes this system work becomes unreliable because there is not enough cool night air to draw the stored heat out of the mass before morning comes. In those conditions, this system reduces your air conditioning load and your electricity bill meaningfully, but it will not eliminate your need for mechanical cooling entirely. I will be plain about that. The system was developed in mountain climates, places where nights cool down reliably even when days are brutal. In a Satoyama summer, nighttime temperatures in the valleys drop to the low 60s even after days that hit 95. That overnight drop is the engine that makes passive thermal mass cooling work at its best. Here is one important safety note to keep in mind for your setup. The water containers must be sealed completely and checked monthly. Standing water that can be reached by mosquitoes, or water that develops leaks and soaks into a floor or wall, creates a different problem entirely. Use food-grade buckets with locking lids. Be sure to label them clearly so there is no confusion. Check the seals at the start of each cooling season. This takes 5 minutes and it matters. Now, here is the part that should make you pause for a moment and think. You can buy every material I have described, the foil, the buckets, the tiles, the charcoal, at a hardware store or online, today, for under $300 total. None of it is patented. None of it requires professional installation for the basic setup. None of it generates a monthly service contract, a refrigerant recharge bill, or a repair call at $400 an hour. And yet, if you walk into a home improvement store and ask someone how to cool your home this summer, not one person in 20 will mention thermal mass, radiant barriers, or passive cooling of any kind. They will walk you to the air conditioner aisle. They will show you the portable units, the window units, the mini-split systems. Because that is where the margin is. That is where the service contracts are. That is where the replacement cycle lives. It is not a conspiracy. It is simpler and almost worse than that. It is just that there is no money in teaching someone to fill buckets with water and stack tiles against a warm wall. There is no recurring revenue in Binchatan charcoal and a roll of reflective foil. The knowledge did not disappear because it stopped working. It faded because it stopped being sold. And the people in the mountain villages who kept using it, my grandfather, his neighbors, the old craftsmen who built homes that stayed cool without machines, they were not keeping a secret. They simply never stopped doing what worked. You have the same option, and now you understand why it works. Here is what I want you to do this weekend, not next month, not when the weather gets worse. This weekend, while the information is still sitting fresh in your mind and before the heat settles in for good. First, go into your attic. Take a flashlight and look at the underside of your roof decking. If you see bare wood with no reflective layer between the decking and your attic floor insulation, that is your first job. Order 2 rolls of radiant barrier foil online or pick them up at a hardware store. Budget between $50 and $80. Staple the foil to the underside of the rafters, reflective face down, with a 1-inch air gap between the foil and the wood above it. Work in the early morning before the attic heats up. This single step alone, done correctly, will reduce the heat pouring into the top of your home by a measurable amount within the first week. Second, count your south-facing and west-facing windows. For each one that receives direct afternoon sun, buy an exterior bamboo roll shade, between $15 and $30 per window. Hang them outside the frame, extending 3 inches past the glass on both sides. If you cannot find bamboo roll shades locally, a simple exterior shade sail anchored above the window works nearly as well and costs about the same. Do this before noon on a hot day and then stand inside next to the glass. You will feel the difference within the hour. Third, buy 6 food-grade 5-gallon buckets with locking lids. Roughly $2 each, so $12 total for this step. Fill them completely with water. Seal the lids. Wrap each bucket in dark cloth or paint the exterior dark, black or deep charcoal gray, so they absorb radiant heat efficiently rather than reflecting it. Place 4 of them along the interior face of your warmest wall, the one that backs onto the west or south exterior. Place the remaining 2 in your bedroom, against the wall that warms most through the afternoon. These buckets are now working. They are absorbing heat that would otherwise go into your air and your walls. Every night, open your north and east-facing windows and let the cool air draw that stored heat back out. The system resets while you sleep. Fourth, go to a tile supply shop or the flooring section of a hardware store. Buy 4 large format ceramic floor tiles. 12 by 24 inches is ideal, though any dense ceramic tile works. Spend between $4 and $12. Place 2 in your bedroom near the west-facing window, flat on the floor. Place the other 2 in your kitchen near the stove. They need no installation, no adhesive, no grout. They simply sit there, cool and heavy, pulling heat out of the air around them all day. Fifth, order 2 pounds of Binchatan charcoal online for your bedroom and 2 pounds for your main living space. Place each bundle in a breathable cotton bag and set it in a corner of the room. That is all. Check every 2 to 3 years and replace when the charcoal has fully saturated. You will know because the humidity regulation effect fades and the room begins to feel sticky again. Recharging Binchotan by setting it in direct sunlight for a full day can extend its life, though replacement is inexpensive enough that most people simply swap it out on a regular schedule. The full shopping list spoken plainly. 2 rolls of radiant barrier foil at $50 to $80, 4 to 6 exterior bamboo window shades at $60 to $180 depending on window count, 6 food-grade 5-gallon buckets with lids at $12, 4 large ceramic floor tiles at $4 to $12, and 4 pounds of Binchatan charcoal at $24 to $30. Total first-time cost, between $150 and $314, depending on your home size and how many west-facing windows you are working with. After this first setup, your ongoing cost is essentially nothing. The water costs nothing to refill. The tiles last indefinitely. The foil lasts a decade or more. The charcoal replacement, every 2 to 3 years, runs under $60 total for the whole home. Compare that to what you were paying. Compare it to the hundreds you've spent. $300 to $500 every single summer month in cooling electricity. That is the number. That is the single number I want you to hold in your mind right now. Not as something to feel bad about. You did not know there was another way, but as something to measure against going forward. Now, I want to ask you something directly, and I genuinely want your answer in the comments. When you think about the home you grew up in, not the home you live in now, but the one from your childhood, was it a home that stayed naturally cool in summer? Did it have thick walls, a deep porch, heavy floors, trees planted close? Or was it a home that ran the air conditioning from May through September without question? I ask because I have noticed, talking with people who watch these, that those who grew up in older homes, in houses built before 1960 or so, often have a memory of a room that was always cool. A basement, a room that stays naturally cool and quiet. A shaded and quiet back room, a quiet and cool pantry. That memory is not nostalgia. That right there is thermal mass. That is the system working, built into the bones of the house before the builders forgot why they were building it that way. Tell me what you remember. Your stories help me more than you know. I read every comment, and those answers shape what I make next. If you have found this useful, if the logic holds up for you, if you are already thinking about which wall in your home faces west and how many buckets would fit along its base, then stay. Press the subscribe button now if you have not already, because what I share here is always the same kind of thinking, old methods, cheap materials, problems solved before they become expensive. The next one will be worth your time. And the natural next problem this system raises is one I hear about constantly. You have cooled the mass of your home. You have stopped the heat at the roof and the windows. But what about the moisture? What about the humid air that finds its way in through gaps, through the floor, through the spaces around pipes and wires, and turns a manageable summer into a damp, heavy, uncomfortable one that damages your walls and your health quietly over years? That is a subject that deserves its own careful walkthrough, and it is exactly where we are going next. For now, do the work this weekend. Buy the buckets. You can find them at any local hardware store. Hang the shades. Keep the sun's heat outside where it belongs. Go up into the attic with a staple gun and a roll of foil and spend a half day doing the single most effective thing you can do for your summer comfort. The materials are cheap. You likely already have most of them in your garage. The method is old. It's been proven effective for generations. And the result is a home that holds its cool the way a stone cellar holds its cool. Not because a machine is fighting the heat, but because the house itself has learned to absorb it, manage it, and let it go quietly in the night. Look after the small things, and the large problems never come. My grandfather said this about tools, about soil, about wooden beams and rice stores, and everything else he kept in that mountain home for 80 years without replacing. He was right about all of it, and he would have been right about this too, if anyone had thought to ask him before the hardware stores decided there was a better answer to sell.